Hi everybody, this is Bob Takano. I decided to make this video mainly because I've always been interested in how accomplished individuals got to be that way. I know that there's some interest out there in just how someone gets to be a weightlifting coach, and so I decided to provide a review of my weightlifting life. I hope you find it helpful. Now, on this slide, I've got the word addiction, which most of the people in the weightlifting establishment don't like to use. But I think most of you that have been in the sport for a while realize that you have to be addicted to it in order to pursue it because it's just too much work. And the same thing can be said about coaching. If you're not addicted to weightlifting and you're not addicted to the craft of coaching, you're probably not going to get very far. So let's get on with it and start out with this. Talking about my very ordinary beginnings. A lot of people think that some folks that are successful have a great deal of advantages that they're born with. I was a very normal child. I grew up in a very normal neighborhood. I wasn't the healthiest kid or the tallest. I had all the normal childhood illnesses, including measles, mumps, and chickenpox. I suffered from bronchitis, which resulted in me catching a cold every month. During ages 6 and 7, I missed a lot of school. I had a hard time gaining weight. So when I was 7 years old, I only weighed 45 pounds, which is pretty skinny. So as a result, I quickly developed into bully bait. Through junior high, I was always the shortest kid in class. I was the only Japanese American kid in the school that was predominantly Mexican American and white. Many of my classmates' dads had fought in the Pacific Theater, so Jap was a common term around their houses, and the kids used that. And I got good grades in everything but PE. So as a result, I was living a perfect recipe for bully bait. So the one thing that struck me about that was that every kid that bullied me was stronger than I was. And so that was probably my first step in my journey to getting stronger, realizing that I was weak. And all I could think about was, how did I get stronger? Every kid that bullied me was stronger than me. If I could get stronger, it was going to fix that. But how do I do it? At that time, there were very few commercial gyms. There were no barbells in schools. They provided barbells for kids that were in adaptive PE. So those were kids that were even worse off physically than I was. And weight training in general was discouraged. So I didn't know if there was a way to get stronger. And even if there was, I'm not sure that very many people knew how to do that. The two things that changed the course of my life, though, was one, I found a magazine called Strength and Health. And it was a magazine that was put out by York Barbell, and it was sold every month on newsstands. And it contained some pretty good weightlifting information on it. Much more was available at that time than what's available today in the information age. I also was able to find a photo of the model of the first barbell that I ever got. It was a J.C. Higgins 110-pound barbell from Sears Roebuck. My parents got it for me in Christmas of 1961. And I followed the directions in the courses, and I trained, and after about 1 month of weight training, I could do 5 pull-ups, whereas before I couldn't even do 1. I wasn't the worst kid in my PE class any longer, and I actually noticed some muscular development taking place in my body. But at the same time, I also had a passion for science. That was my other passion that had been with me for quite a while. Now, this is a kind of a template for my 8th grade science project. What I did for that 8th grade science project was I did these things, these graphs, which are called phylogenetic trees. And I did them for 5,000 mammalian species. And I'm not sure that my 8th grade science teacher could even figure out whether I'd done it correctly or not. But that just gives you an idea that at that time there were two things that were driving me. One was to get stronger, and the other one was just my interest in the biological sciences. Now, when I went up to high school, I didn't get a great start for my science education. Because of poor programming, I was enrolled in dummy biology in the 10th grade, and it was taught by one of my former junior high PE teachers, Mr. Whitney, who had come up to Franklin High School so he could be a football coach. So I managed to get transferred out of the semi-dummy biology class, or into a semi-dummy biology class. And this was so long ago at that point that Watson and Crick had yet to win the Nobel Prize for their work with DNA. And I didn't get to take high school physiology because my counselor wanted me to be in student council. That upset me to no end. And I later ended up teaching high school physiology, a course that I had never actually taken. But I still got into a pretty good college. I got into Occidental College here in Los Angeles. And as a biology major, I spent a lot of time at the Moore Laboratory of Zoology. And I became an authority on the nesting behavior of Quaker parakeets. And a lot of you will probably think that, well, what's that got to do with anything? But what it did was it taught me how the scientific method works and what processes you had to go to determine whether or not something was actually factual. And so that was very valuable. And I also learned to value statistics, which was immensely valuable in analyzing sports training, because a lot of the articles that I was to read later on analyzed the results of training statistically. So I developed an interest in statistics at that time. So the revelation was at that time that science and sport were interconnected. Not everybody had made that connection. I had spent hours in the Occidental College library trying to find materials that connected science to sport performance instead of studying. That probably lowered my GPA. And I was amazed to find out that the Eastern Bloc nations were already doing this, very much unlike what was going on here in the United States. And I devoured every bit of sports science literature I could. Okay, so when I graduated from Occidental, I got a degree, a science teaching credential, and I started teaching junior high science and initiated a weightlifting program for the students, and this was in 1969, 50 years ago. This is a shot of me on the left lifting weights. This was the Southern California Championships put on at Norton Air Force Base in 1970. I knew how to lift weights. I had some willing kids at Luther Burbank Junior High School, and I figured, wow, I can coach this, because there were a lot of people coaching that had not been weightlifters. I figured with my background in weightlifting at that time, I would be able to teach kids how to lift weights, and it would be a snap. But 1 year later, I'd coached about 7 or 8 kids and entered them in about 4 meets. None of them could do a full snatch or a full clean and jerk at the end of the first school year. And then I got laid off from that first year teaching job, so things are not going as planned. So my teaching career wasn't going well, my coaching career wasn't going well, but somehow I managed to get another teaching job in the Los Angeles Unified School District at Gage Junior High, and I started another weightlifting program there. All right, this time I was able to analyze what I had done wrong, and I began to change things. And 4 of the athletes that came out of that program became national junior Olympic champions. 3 of them were good enough to set national junior Olympic records. 1 qualified for the U.S. Nationals. So being an active weightlifter with teaching skills turned out to be a perfect combination. And I was at Gage for 7 years and had a great time and learned many of the coaching skills that were necessary for me to become an even better weightlifting coach. In 1977, I moved on to high school because I didn't want to keep teaching middle school science, junior high science. I wanted to teach biology and physiology. There was an opening at Van Nuys High School in San Fernando Valley, and so I was able to get the job there. Now, about that time, translations of the Eastern European articles began to emerge. There were 2 sources of those articles. One was a journal called Soviet Sports Review that was edited by Dr. Michael Yessis at Cal State Fullerton, and then a series of weightlifting journals that were translated by Bud Charniga in Michigan. And whenever one of those came out, I simply devoured every article that I could. And that's how I got to learn a great deal about how weightlifting was done systematically. So the weightlifting program that I had at Van Nuys High from 1977 to 2004, I also taught advanced placement biology and honors physiology. And the physiology course gave me a chance to review that material every year. And so I could see how it was affecting the development of my athletes. I also became the coordinator of the medical and performing arts magnet programs. And those two experiences were also helpful, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I was able to open up my weightlifting program to the community, and so I got people in that were not students at Van Nuys High School, and that resulted in a much richer program. So my greatest source of satisfaction was the athletes that I was able to develop, and I'm going to highlight some of them here. I know I'm going to leave out some people, but the best one was Albert Hood. Albert Hood lifted for me for 5 years. He won National Junior Olympics, National Juniors, National Seniors, the USA Nationals. He set all of the American records in all of those particular events. He made the Olympic team in 1984, and he was the only American to set 2 national records in the Olympic Games. And then he retired right after that. He was still only 19, so he retired while he was a junior. But he was the most talented weightlifter I've ever coached. And it was because of him that I learned how to work with extremely talented people. Sean Waxman, who is now coaching, he was an athlete that solved problems emotionally, and I was forced to have to deal with that issue. Made me a better coach, and I'm very happy now that Sean is also a coach with his own weightlifting club, and he's developing national level, elite level lifters himself. Diana Furman was one of the first women in this country to really have a weightlifting career. She was on the first world championship team in 1987, I believe, and she made 6 world championship teams, won 4 national championships, and set all of the national records before she retired. And she did it with a lot of hard work. She wasn't super talented. She was pretty talented, and she did a lot of work and was able to bring a lot of excitement to the women's side of the sport at a time when it was just emerging. Emmy Vargas is another tremendously strong athlete. I think Emmy's took second place at nationals about 5 or 6 times because she was in the same bodyweight class as Cheryl Hayworth. But she was an exceptional lifter. And now she's got her own club, and she's developing some national level lifters as well. Nyep Din was another exceptionally talented athlete. He won 5 or 6 silver medals at nationals, and I believe he just won the Masters World Championships. And he's also got his own weightlifting club, and he's developing national caliber athletes as well. Christine Na is currently my best lifter, and she's in the top 5 inner category at the national level. And she's made quite a bit of progress with me. And again, she's just a very, very hard worker. And I think if anybody were to trace her career, they would find out how that hard work has paid off for her. But beyond just coaching, I'm extremely interested in coaching education. And I keep myself involved with USAW Level 1 and Level 2 courses, teaching those. And I have taught those for a long time, probably about 20 years. I've also had a number of publications and presentations with the NSCA in showing people how snatches and clean and jerks can be used to make athletes even better athletes. I've given my own seminars, webinars, coaching clinics. This flyer is from a lecture tour that I did down in Australia a few years ago. I was also voted into the Hall of Fame for USA Weightlifting, and it was for my contributions as a coach and not necessarily as a lifter. I wasn't a very good lifter, but I think I've contributed a lot to the sport as far as coaching and coaching knowledge has gone. All right, I've written a programming book. Many of you have bought the book, and I thank you for that. I'm hoping that it gave you a better understanding of how program is laid out for coaches. And then today I own and operate Takano Weightlifting. It's a gym in the western San Fernando Valley. We've got 10 platforms, excellent equipment. And with my assistant, Toby, and myself, we coach quite a few athletes. And anybody that wants to stop by and get some coaching to figure out how to correct certain errors that they have, we're available for that as well. I've also started an internship, and in the internship, coaches come in, they learn how to work with athletes, how to develop technique, how to do programming. A number of various aspects of coaching are covered, and we've had quite a bit of success with that. We've had 52 people come through that program since we started it in 2014, so that's been 5 years. And this is a little video about that.
I started out being small. I was the smallest kid in my class. I was the only Japanese kid in my class, and I had to do something to keep the bullies away. I was not a very good athlete, and so I was trying to figure out some way that I could get better. I decided that I needed to compete as a weightlifter simply because I wanted my results to be officially recognized. And the first time that I saw my name printed in Lifting Nuys, I felt like, I've arrived as an athlete. At a certain point, I began to realize that my potential was not as an athlete, but as an instructor. I've always regarded myself as a protoplasmic engineer, which means I'm taking the structures within the body and changing their functional capacities. The problem that we have as coaches is we can't cut open the person, we can't manipulate them, we have to make the body use its own resources to affect those changes. That's what I like doing. I change the functional capacity of the body. My best weightlifter was an Olympian. He set 2 American records in the Olympics in '84. I'm past the point where I have to feel that I need to make my mark as a coach. I think I've done enough of that. And so I'm just happy to try and get other people to learn how to coach so that they can move forward in the sport. I thought, well, the best thing to do is we can offer an internship so that people that want to coach, they can learn the methodologies that I've developed for coaching and then go out and coach people. Lift Society is one of 2 gyms now that are our affiliates. I'm not saying I want 200 gyms to be using this in 5 years. I'm just taking it as it goes. But I would like to get good training and coaching information out there so that whoever wants to get in the sport knows that there's a place where they can go and get that kind of instruction.
I got to spend 100 hours here, 5 days a week. I'm still learning. It's a learning process. And I get to take those teachings to Lift Society. Part of being a good coach is having your athlete trust you. Doing this internship and being one of his lifters has helped me feel confident. I know that when I give a cue, it's coming from a place of love and from knowledge.
I learned everything I know as a coach from Bob Takano. His coaching style, I think, is a bit unique because you get a lot of coaches who try to micromanage the athlete, and with Bob you don't get that. He lets you grow as an athlete on your own. I think what's special about Bob as a coach is that he was there from the very beginnings of modern weightlifting. He's been there throughout the growth of the sport, the growth of the fitness industry in general, and he's seen the fads come and go, and he's still a very successful coach.
I think it's just a wonderful adventure that I've been on, and I've enjoyed it and continue to enjoy it. It's up to other people to place some value on it. I just had a good time.
Okay, so finally let's finish off with what I believe and stand for. All of us have a lot to learn about weightlifting, myself included. There is no formal education institution in this country that's offering the knowledge of how to become a weightlifting coach. So we're basically on our own. We are in a situation right now where there are many voices shouting at you if you want to become a coach, telling you need to do this, you need to do this. And it's very difficult to tell which of those has the most validity and which ones you should follow. So moving forward, what I would like to do is I would like to develop educational programs for people that want to be weightlifting coaches, and also in that way help people that want to be weightlifters as well. I believe that fact-based information is the best, and you have to know where to find it. And you also need to find the best people that are doing the best job, that really have a belief in the value of the sport, and you need to listen to them. And the final point is, whether you want to be a weightlifter or a coach, it is a lot of work. You're not going to be able to get very good as either a coach or an athlete if you're not going to be willing to put in the work. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I thank you for paying attention and listening, and I hope that this helps you to move forward as either an athlete or a coach. Thank you very much.